Joining us now on Houston Sports Talk from St. Louis, where he's covering the NLCS, is MLB.com correspondent Richard Justice. Thanks so much for joining us, Richard. Want to talk playoffs shortly, but first, would love to get your thoughts on the Astros' new skipper, AJ Hinch. What did you think about the hire, and does this seem like a good fit for what Jeff Luhnow is doing right now?
I do think it's a good fit, and I have a high regard for AJ Hinch, and I think he deserved a second chance. It was a very bad situation in Phoenix. You know, we in an era now in baseball, if you hire a manager and he doesn't have any previous managerial experience, coaching experience, it's no big deal. It's happened with Mike Matheny, with Robin Ventura, Brad Osmus, and they've all enjoyed some measure of success. When Josh Burns did it in Phoenix, two things happened. As you guys know, he fired a very popular manager, Bob Melvin, a very competent manager, and he brought in a guy with no experience, and the team didn't win. It was a disaster. It was met very poorly by the public, and so I think AJ deserved another shot. You know, the Astros have many other issues. How much payroll can the owner support? You can't win with a $45 million payroll. How many of these young kids that they're counting on, how many of them will make it? You know, young players don't come with guarantees. And Jeff Luhnow had a bad summer, not signing his number one pick, releasing J.D. Martinez, things like that. So it's an organization in transition that's growing. They hope next year's a breakthrough year. They hope their young shortstop, Carlos Correa's in the big leagues, Mark Appel's in the big leagues. So my hope is that AJ and Jeff Luhnow will be able to grow together and have a productive partnership.
I want to talk free agency with you for a bit, and I want to first ask you, do you have a couple of players in mind you think the Astros should pursue, and do you think the Astros' perception around baseball will affect them as they pursue players in free agency?
I think I was going to say J.D. Martinez, but I guess that probably would not work. They released him in spring training. And let me just say this about J.D. Martinez. This was a huge mistake on the part of the organization. What they didn't know was, and maybe they couldn't know, he basically changed his swing at the end of last season by watching Jason Castro, by studying video. He saw a flaw in his swing. It makes you wonder why they didn't pick it up themselves. But he reinvented himself as a player. But by the time he got to spring training, they no longer believed in him. I would say the Astros need probably bullpen help. They need to sign 3-4 relievers. That's been the priority in past years. Jesse Crane did not work out this year. Chad Qualls, Matt Albers. But those were guys they could afford. I don't really fault Jeff Luhnow for that. You know, they could not afford. So I'd say you go stock up on the part of the team you should be able to fill at the most bargaining basement price. And then the other thing I'd say is they have holes to fill at third base. They don't know what to expect of John Singleton at first base. Chris Carter's the DH. They're pretty good at second. Obviously, they're very good at second. They have a batting champ at second. They have a young player coming at shortstop. Maybe one outfielder and a third baseman. But, they have guys in the system. But, again, I don't know how quickly those guys are going to be ready. And I'd say, like, the Miami Marlins are the model in that they had all these great young kids, Yelich and Hechavarria, and all coming fast, Jose Fernandez. But they took Garrett Jones, they got Casey McGee, they got Jeff Baker. In other words, they put adults in the locker room to sort of lead the way in terms of work ethic and to grind, how you grind through a season. So there's lots of work to do. It'll be an interesting season because I think their games are going to be back on TV. George Springer's an exciting player. Carlos Correa is a very exciting player. I hope, as someone who lives in Houston, I hope the worst is over.
Richard, wanted to move on to some national issues here. And first of all, with the Dodgers exiting the playoffs after the divisional series, what do you make of all the rumors surrounding Ned Coletti and Don Mattingly? And could Houston native and Tampa Bay GM Andrew Friedman finally make that leap to another franchise?
Yeah, I don't think, first of all, on Andrew, I know him pretty well. They're joined at the hip in Tampa with Matt Silverman and Stu Sternberg, the owner. Matt is the team president, and Andrew. They came there together. I cannot envision any circumstance that one of those guys would leave. And also, I'll tell you this. I think they love their situation there. I think they love the challenge of trying to get a ballpark built, keeping the franchise competitive with a low payroll. They take a lot of pride in that. And I'll tell you guys, teams that don't have money to spend really this is going to sound weird to you, but on a certain level, they like it because you don't make any payroll mistakes. You're not burdened by any contracts. It's just the art of the deal to be able to go out and fill your roster a different way with the analytics, by seeing things in players. And I think the Rays internally use this phrase, seeing things that others don't see. In Baltimore, for instance, they look at their team as a 35, a 40-man roster. Other than, I think, Adam Jones and Ubaldo Jimenez, they have no contractual obligations. Now J.J. Hardy. And the way they look at it, when there's a guy on the street, hey, Steve Pierce say, they can look him in the eye and say, hey, look, buddy, you come here, you're going to get a chance. Our track record proves it. In spring training, Buck Showalter has a large board in the clubhouse. How many innings you've pitched, how many at-bats you've gotten. And the point is, when they send a guy down, they say, hey, look, you go down and take care of your business. You'll be back here. We just interchange players. If you pitch poorly on Tuesday, you may not be here on Wednesday. It's sort of you sing for your supper every day. And I think the teams that have that situation and are not burdened by contracts, the Yankees had very little flexibility with their things, and then you've seen the Red Sox try to get out of it. I think those teams feel like that's the way to go. And as we look at the playoffs today, 11 of the top 12 payroll teams are gone from the playoffs. And that's, I think, the new wave of what analytics has brought to baseball. You can compete. On opening day, you can't look at the payrolls, the size of the payrolls, and decide what the standings will be.
Well, we're just underway here as far as the NLCS and the ALCS, but what are your observations of it so far?
Well, I think the Orioles, I love the Orioles. I love what they've done there. They blinked a little bit, with Britton and with Tillman. We really haven't seen that. But I'll say this for you, these playoffs have been great. So many, I think 12 times the winning run's been scored in the seventh or later. I think there's been 11 one-run games. It's just been amazing theater to watch. But the Kansas City Royals are a really good team. They have one of the best defensive teams I've ever seen. You can watch those outfielders play, and it's about as good a show as there is in baseball. To watch Gordon and Kane and Dyson and those guys, they're phenomenal. And they have a bullpen, the guys that throw hard and make hitters uncomfortable, and they have a pretty good starting rotation. So when they have guys, I think they were 70-14 during the regular season when they scored more than 3 runs. When they get a little offense from Hosmer, from Aoki or whoever, they're good. And you know what was so cool to me? When they built that franchise, those guys, Perez and Hosmer and Moustakas, came up through the system. They were going to change. They won all through the minor leagues. They were going to change the Royals. When they came up at the end of 2011, we thought, that's it. They're going to win the World Series now for 5 straight years. And it showed that winning is hard, that young players have bumps in the road. And to see Hosmer and to see Moustakas in there playing well and helping their team, now 2 games from going to the World Series, it's very cool. Their owner there, David Glass, invested in a baseball guy named Dayton Moore, and they stayed the course together. And it's been 6 years or 8 years, long years, when the popular thing to do would have been to fire Dayton, get somebody else in there. But Dayton told him every step of the way, young players are going to advance, they're going to fall back, they're going to advance. And the reason he made the Will Myers trade, which everybody torched, was it's time to win. We have accumulated players and assets, but it's time to win. And James Shields will change the tone in our clubhouse. And he's done that. And the other guy in that trade, Wade Davis, has become one of the best relievers in baseball.
Yeah, what a great story the Royals are. And we were just talking about this last week. It seems like if you wrote the script, Richard, of this, you would be laughed at by a Hollywood executive saying, nobody's ever going to believe this.
Yeah, and I think this is a cliche. The whole is greater than the sum of the parts. But in baseball, teamwork does work. It does matter. And you do need a cohesive unit and a guy. And the challenge of a manager now, front offices can supply managers with lineup data, with defensive alignments, late inning matchups, all of that stuff. But what doesn't change is that the manager has to have a people touch. He has to convince the player that what I'm selling is best for all of us, and what's best for the team is best for you. That's not always easy to do, but that's the one thing that's not going to change in 100 years. And I think in guys like Bochy and Matheny and Showalter, Buck Showalter is the best I've ever been around at communicating a message to the team and executing that message and making them believe in themselves. And I think that's true. Now, but again, these games have been so close that it has been a coin flip. But it's a remarkable time in that one team has 3 Cy Young Award winners lined up. They don't win a game. The team that won the most games, they don't win a game. And the team I think a lot of us would have said is the most complete team, Washington, they're gone from the playoffs too, winning 1 game. So it's an incredible time to be a baseball fan and to be part of this thing, watching this thing develop.
Yeah, a couple of franchises kind of getting back on track in the American League, and then you have the two ones that just seem to do everything right in the National League. Well, you've been listening to MLB.com correspondent Richard Justice. You can follow him on Twitter @RichardJustice. Hey, thanks so much for taking the time with us, Richard. Pleasure to have you on the show.